Well, we have Dafydd Llywelyn, the former Police and Crime Commissioner for Dafydd Powys. So welcome along, Dafydd.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. And you're down at the count, are you?
Yes, I'm in the count in Broteifi School in Llandysil. This is the sort of headquarters for the regional count today, as well as obviously the constituency count for Ceredigion. And this is where the count for the police commissioner will take place on Sunday. Obviously, we don't know the result of that until Sunday.
Yeah, it's very early days, obviously, and we have already seen some declarations, and we've also heard sort of on the grapevine that, you know, Leanne Wood, her position is precarious there. It does seem to be, certainly if that's the case, that Labour are making gains. And, you know, the talk really is about the popularity of Mark Drakeford and his handling of the pandemic, which may just sway Labour, you know, to make some more gains. How do you see it?
Well, I think, just to repeat the first comment you made, that it's very early to be making too many detailed predictions. Although, you know, I've been hearing similar noises out of the Rhondda, as you mentioned, and one or two other areas where seemingly, you know, Labour have put a concerted effort to try and ensure that they win those areas and those seats. So it wouldn't surprise me to see that Labour have done well in some areas. But then, you know, if we take somewhere like Montgomeryshire, which is one of the areas that has already been announced, and as a result there, the Conservatives have increased the majority, and Plaid Cymru came second in Montgomeryshire, which is a fantastic result for Llywelyn, who's a local candidate there for Plaid Cymru, increasing the Plaid Cymru vote by circa 8%, I think. So there are strange things occurring in different regions. It seems that the Liberal Democrat vote, for example, is disintegrating. Certainly has done in Montgomeryshire, and we are getting sort of a picture that's similar to that here in Ceredigion. So that possibly doesn't bode well for William Powell, the candidate for the Liberal Democrats in Brecon and Radnorshire. So I think if you look at the overall picture across the whole of Wales, I think there will be, you know, local stories and local issues that will have probably persuaded people to vote in different directions. And of course, as you mentioned, the pandemic, the way in which Mark Drakeford has dealt with it, you know, some might argue the way that the Westminster government have dealt with things have also played into the results that we're starting to hear about. But it is very, very early to make some, in my opinion anyway, to make too many judgments about the overall picture yet.
Yeah. Wales is a very small country. You know, geographically, it's quite widespread, very rural areas. And some people are saying, you know, look, this is all well and good having a Senedd, you know, Welsh Parliament up there in Cardiff, but we don't hear or see head nor hide of them unless there's an election, especially in Mid Wales, especially in North Wales. What's the message you've been getting, you know, on the doorstep, and what has Plaid been getting? What's the message Plaid have been getting in general in these areas? Do they want to see more power coming down towards, you know, Mid Wales and North Wales? Would they like to see a more sort of a regional-based parliament where it's divided throughout the country?
Well, what I've been hearing sort of on the doorstep, and what I have the privilege of going across the 7 constituency areas in the Dafydd Powys area, you know, from the very rural described in Powys through to the more sort of urban areas of places like Carmarthen, Amerford and Llanelli. And I think people now know what the Senedd does in Cardiff, which I think is important. That has come about as a result of the COVID response and the fact that, you know, health is devolved, education is devolved, local authority activity, etc. So I think the public are more aware that we have elections in Wales and that this is an important election for our future for the next 5 years in Wales. And the other thing that I've seen, although I can't say that it seems to be playing out dramatically and having a massive impact in terms of the electorate this time round, is, you know, we've seen the surge in support towards Yes Cymru, who, you know, aren't a party politically affiliated group. They just want to see and see the discussion about independence, you know, increase. And I think that's been an interesting one. I've knocked on many a door where, you know, there's been a Yes Cymru sticker or a banner in the window. And that potentially, although, you know, it might not have much to sort of influence the votes this time round, that could be something that we might see developing in the future, especially if things happen, on an UK basis. If we look up at Scotland, and if we see that things happen slightly different in Scotland with the SNP and the Greens taking sort of control of Holyrood in Scotland, will that then further invoke some interest in Wales in relation to opportunities towards independence?
It is an interesting one, but I know that some political commentators have said that Adam Price certainly hasn't banged the drum loud enough on the issue of independence, and he should be doing a lot more of that. The likelihood is now that there is going to be a coalition government between Plaid Cymru and Labour, and Plaid Cymru are in a very powerful position to make some demands, but independence is not going to happen for quite some time. We can be clear on that. So in the meantime, really, what Mark Drakeford is saying, if he gets back in government, is that they will be asking for far greater powers, and certainly as far as the police crime justice system is concerned. Would you welcome that?
Yeah, I would welcome that. I'm an individual that's been on the record for a number of years now, stating and advocating my support for what is set out very clearly in Silk Part 2, which is the technical work that was done through the Silk Commission many years ago by now, and also the Thomas Commission, which obviously we gave evidence as police commissioners in Wales to that call for evidence in that commission, which was looking at the devolution or greater devolution of justice. And what they're saying is that ultimately there's nothing that would stop a Welsh legal jurisdiction being created and obviously policing then being devolved to Welsh Government. Now, that's something I support, but it isn't necessarily something that everybody would support. And it'll be interesting, and this is why the police commissioner elections are interesting, in my opinion, and I would say that as the current commissioner in Dyfed Powys, is that, if we get, again, parties that are supportive of greater devolution of policing in Wales, so Labour and Plaid Cymru, re-elected into the police commissioner roles, that can be something that we could further look to progress. But if that doesn't happen, and let's say, for example, in the Dyfed Powys area or in North Wales, which is the more likely of the four areas for there to be a shift in the power, maybe to Conservatives or to Labour or whoever, then I wonder, whether that will then become a bit of more of a battle of wills then in relation to that point. But for me, the levers of powers around health and education, local authority are all devolved to Welsh Government. The partnership working that they're now doing in Wales, it makes sense for us to now step into having justice and policing devolved to Cardiff. But I also appreciate and understand that not everybody would have that view, sadly.
We've seen, within communities, the sort of demise of the youth service, and we've seen within your term, really, some of the projects you've instigated, certainly in the seaside area, Tishire area of Llanelli, getting the kids involved in football and all sorts of things, and supporting people who are working on the coalface, those charities, those volunteers within the community. Part of this deal with, remaining in the UK when Mark Drakeford or Adam Price combined go to Westminster to ask for more powers. Within the justice system, we see an awful lot of money going through the courts on a daily basis, and none of it stays here. It goes over the bridge, doesn't it? Would you be sort of very vocal in asking for a fair chunk of that money to come back into Wales so that it can be used for these kind of projects?
Yeah, most definitely. The demise of the youth service you allude to, has been, a sad legacy, in my opinion, of the Westminster Conservative government. They haven't provided additional funding ultimately to Welsh Government that will then allow the unitary authorities in Wales to fund the services. And what I've seen as the police commissioner is that I've had to use a little bit of innovation, I suppose, from a policing budget perspective, and the money that I get through the criminal justice grant that we have, the Ministry of Justice grant that we have, putting that at play into work to prevent and have early intervention activity with young people. So we're actually using Ministry of Justice money ultimately to pay for activity that really should be the responsibility in some cases of other agencies, but it's because of the cuts that have come elsewhere that we're having to do that. So I would be advocating, yes, for a fair funding settlement for Wales. And interesting from a policing point of view, they are looking to review the funding formula over the next few years. So it's really important for the Police Commissioner, Dafydd Powys, and collectively the Welsh Commissioners to work together to ensure that we have that fair share of funding, because the taxpayers in Wales actually pay more for their policing services as a contribution than the English forces. And a lot of that stems from the fact that Westminster, the current funding formula, it doesn't work off a population basis. If we were working off a population basis, we would get circa £25 million extra money, which is how the Barnett consequential and Barnett formula works for funding Welsh government and services in Wales. We would get £25 million extra immediately if it was worked on a population basis. So we need a strong voice, and I hope that I'll be in a position to carry on with that work post the election result on Sunday. But if not, I will wish the potential new commissioner, whoever he or she would be, all the best in the role in the future.
Most people, obviously, they make the call. They want to see more policemen and women on the streets. They feel safer with that. You've advocated and supported, CCTV. We've seen a massive increase in that. There's a balance to be struck, isn't there? But if you do get back in, will you be looking at trying to boost the numbers of PCs and PCSOs and sort of community support workers?
Yeah, so most definitely. So we already know that the funding for this financial year that we've already started, the one that I set, so I set the budget for this year that we're in now, the 21-22 budget, we will have an increase in police officer numbers this year and next year of about a circa 100, I think the actual figure is 102 additional police officers, where Dafydd Powys Police currently has approximately 1,200 police officers. So it's just short of, between 8 and 10% additional resources in terms of police officer numbers that we will have in the next 2 years. So I can give that categoric assurance now. Some of that stems from funding that's been made available by central government, because the current government are looking to replace the officers that they cut over the last 10 years. So when they say 20,000 extra officers, we must remember the context that they've cut over the last 10 years police officer numbers in England and Wales by 20,000. So there's just a replacement of that. And part of that programme will see an extra 102 officers in Dafydd Powys. But what we need, actually, is a blended workforce, the blend of tools and technology that is I have invested in, working with the police force, the human resources as well, to make what hopefully will be the most efficient and effective police service for the communities. And the communities want to see police commissioners, support officers, but also police constables. So we're introducing, by the way, we've started it. I couldn't make much noise about it because of PERDA restrictions, but we're going to have town centre police constables. We trialled it in Senedd. It worked very well. We had a PC who was dedicated, who would engage with the local community, be in and out of businesses, talking to people. Senedd thought it was fantastic, so we've rolled that out to another 8 towns in the Dafydd Powys area as part of our refreshing of neighbour policing teams. So I'm confident, that the public will see over the next few years, irrespective of in some ways who the police commissioner is, set in the strategic direction, because I can't see that any commissioner would look to make any drastic changes to this direction of travel. We will see more visible policing, police officers in the community, neighbour policing teams working with partners to ultimately try and ensure that the Dafydd Powys Police Force area stays, which it is, in being one of the safest locations to live and work in England, across England and Wales, which is something been really proud to be able to say that out loud in public meetings. But the challenge then as the commissioner is to retain that level of resourcing and ensuring that we have safe communities.
Yeah, and as I say, prevention is better than cure, really. It also takes joined up working. And so looking at that, if you get back in, are you going to be looking to make these stronger links with people like the drugs rehabilitation services, the voluntary groups within the communities, people that can sort of inform you really and to sort of point you in the right direction as to where your officer's time and energy should be spent?
Yeah, partnership is key. It's been one of the It's one of the cornerstones of the work I've done over the last 5 years. I've been the Commissioner for 5 years now. I don't know where that time went, by the way, but the 5 years has passed where I've really built up some strong relationships with partner agencies. We need to take that to the next level now. I think it would be nice to see sort of co-commissioning of services and being a little bit more dynamic with those services. I think from a drugs perspective that you mentioned as well, I think there's an opportunity for us to be a bit more innovative. Whilst government have the purse strings in terms of health, they do put a lot of money into things like substance misuse programs, but I think we need to be a bit more innovative. We need to look at things that have been piloted elsewhere. For example, heroin-assisted treatment has been piloted in Cleveland recently and has been deemed to be quite successful. There is a cost to that, but they say that the cost of the implementation of such a program is counterbalanced and actually you save in the long run because of the reduction in terms of resources, the police that's required, a health service to deal with somebody who has, maybe a problematic drug issue. Yeah. So I think we need to be innovative, and we've done a lot of work with Welsh Government in getting them around the table, getting them to acknowledge this. And I think over the next term, but bearing in mind it'll be a 3-year term, we will, because it's curtailed because of the extra year given because of the COVID outbreak, of course, and the pandemic. During the next 3 years, I think that is where my direction of travel would be to enhance and build on the current partnership working that we have, and to look to be more innovative with some of the, in particular, responses to substance misuse and alcohol as well that do impact on crime ultimately.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll speak to you soon, I'm sure, and find out what the results are. I think that's on Sunday, isn't it, for the EPCC? Yeah,
it's Sunday, and I think the rate of going through the count today, it might be sort of quite late in the afternoon, maybe 3-4 o'clock on the Sunday, where they will announce. And just looking at the 7 constituency areas in Dyfed-Powys, I don't want to say too much because it's quite difficult to predict, but I think it's likely to be quite a close race between myself as the Plaid Cymru candidate and the Conservative candidate for the Dyfed-Powys area.
Okay. Well, we'll catch up with you on Sunday. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd.
Diolch, ta-ra.